So in the last lecture, we have discussed about variables and values. So in this lecture, we'll be seeing how many types of values we have in JavaScript and what data types they hold. Okay, so let's get into it. So in JavaScript, we have only two type of values. Those are primitives and non-primitives. So the non-primitives are also known as objects, and whatever is outside the object are known as primitive values. So here we have the example of both of these. So the values which are assigned directly to a variable are known as primitive values. Okay, and the values which are inside of any object are known as non-primitive values, or we can say objects. So short and simple, the values which are not inside any object are known as non-primitive values, and rest everything in JavaScript is an object. Okay, so objects we'll be discussing in the upcoming lectures. In this lecture, we'll be purely focusing on the primitive values. Okay, so in primitive values we have 7 data types. Those are number, string, boolean, undefined, null, symbol, and begin. So let's see what every data type does and what are those. So unlike other languages where we use floating point for floating numbers and integer for integer numbers, in JavaScript we use number as a data type. It doesn't matter whether it is a floating point number or it is an integer. It comes under number data type. Okay, so if you are using floating point or you are using decimals or integers, if you check the type of that number, it will be number only. Strings are nothing but these are just sequence of characters wrapped around the single quotes or double quotes. Okay, boolean, these are just true or false values. These are basically logical values. So true and false are the only boolean values we have in JavaScript, and which are basically used to take decisions. Undefined is nothing but we can say it is a fallback value taken by a variable when we don't assign any value to that variable. And null is also a type of empty value which is used in different scenarios. It is similar to undefined, but it is used in different scenarios. Symbol is just a value that is unique and cannot be changed. And begin, it came in 2020. It is basically used to hold the numbers which a number type is unable to hold. Means it holds the larger number which a number is unable to hold. Okay, and we will learn about symbols and begin in the upcoming lectures. And other than these data types, I also wanted to highlight one thing, that JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. So what does that mean? If we are assigning a value to a variable, then we don't explicitly needs to define what type of value a variable should store. It automatically detects the type of the value. Okay, and the values have the types, not the variable. Just keep it in mind. It is a little detailed information which most of the people ignore, but it is something which is very important to keep in mind. Okay, so the last thing we have seen is JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. That means it automatically detects the type of value that variable is holding. at that point. Okay, so let's see all these in example. And before getting started with the data types, let's talk a little bit about commenting of code. Okay, so what is the purpose of comments in JavaScript? Suppose if you don't want to run a piece of code, but still you want to keep that code as a reference, then what you can do is you can use comments like this. Okay, because there are only two ways with which you can make a code not run in JavaScript. Either you remove the code, so JavaScript doesn't know about that code and it runs only whatever is present in that JavaScript file. Or if you want to keep the code but you don't want JavaScript to run that code, then you can simply use these forward slash to comment that code, or we can say to disable that line of code. So if I comment these lines using these forward slash, so what we expect, so it should not console these values. Okay, let's uncomment it back, refresh it. So right now we have values from line number 7, 8, 9 here, 7, 9, sorry, and 11. So if I comment these lines, so this way I'm telling JavaScript like I want to keep this code as a reference, but I don't want you to run this code. So again, if I refresh the code, then you see the commented code is not there in console at all. Okay, there is one other way to do commenting. This is for single line comments. If you want to comment multiple lines manually, then you can use this forward slash, and the shortcut of this is command and forward slash. If you press it, it will enable the comment, or if you press it again, it will disable the comment. Okay, so other way to comment multiple lines, suppose you want to comment this much line of code, then what you need to do is you just need to add a forward slash, an asterisk, and make sure you close that with the asterisk and a forward slash. Otherwise your rest of the code will be commented and won't be displayed at all. Okay, this is coming because we have commented one variable but we have console logged it, so we can comment everything whatever we have till here. And from now onwards I'll be commenting the code for you guys reference. Okay, so this is how we use single line comment and multi-line comment using this forward slash asterisk and asterisk forward slash. Okay, so let's talk about the basic data type, primitive data types. Those are number, strings and boolean. So let's console log it. So let's see true or false first. So as you can clearly see, we have console logged line number 39 and it is returning true, which is in purple colored. That clearly means it is not a string, it is actually a boolean value. Okay, we can check the type of a value using a special keyword, that is type of. So what type of does? Type of basically detects the type of the value and returns the output in string. Okay, so now if we use type of in this true value, then it will detect the type of this value. For example, whether it is a boolean or an integer value, then it returns that value in string. Okay, so let's see. So here the type of this value is boolean, but it is in white because this whole thing is returning the type in string. So again, if I use type of, then you can clearly see that this whole thing is returning string here. Okay, so make sure you use a single type of only, so that you don't get confused, because single type of will return only the type in string format. Okay, so from this example we can clearly see that true is a boolean value. True is of type boolean. We can also check false. See, false is also a boolean. Okay, now let's see some numbers. As I mentioned earlier, if we use floating points, that means numbers with decimals, or we use integers, the data type of all these values will be number only in JavaScript. So let's see. As you can clearly see, here I wrote a floating point and here it is an integer, but in JavaScript it always returns the type as number. Okay, so when you are working with these type of values, just keep in mind that JavaScript will return number for these type of values. Okay, so other than booleans and numbers, we have strings. So in string, as I mentioned, it is just a sequence of characters which is wrapped around single quotes or double quotes. So for example, RAUNAK. So this is just in sequence of characters, and make sure you are wrapping it with the single quotes or the double quotes. Okay, you can't use single quotes and double quotes at the same time. For example, here you have used double quotes and at the end you try to use single quotes, then it doesn't work. It will throw an error straight away, that syntax error again, invalid or unexpected token from line number 43, which is this line. Okay, so make sure whatever you are using, if it is single quotes, then use it at the starting and end. If it is double quotes, then use the double quotes in the starting and end both, but make sure you are using either of these, single quotes or double quotes, to write a string value. Otherwise, what will happen if you don't use any quotes? Then JavaScript will think it is a variable. Okay, let's see what happens now. See, as we already got the example of whatever I was about to teach you next, but here you guys got to know, like, if you are not using the value inside of quotes, then JavaScript will think it is some kind of variable. So make sure you wrap it around the double quotes or single quotes. Okay, so now let's see what is the type of this Raunak now. So here we got it string. Okay, so now let's see how we can use these in variables. Okay, so as I discussed about the dynamic typing, let's see the dynamic typing in action. So for example, let's take a variable, let first name equals to Raunak. Okay, so here we have declared a variable using this let variable declaration. We have given a variable name, we have used this operator equals to. With this we are telling, like, we are going to store some value in it, this variable. Okay, and this is the value which we have stored in this variable. Again, this is a value which we have stored in this variable. So if I console log it, So we got Raunak. Great. So now let's see what is the type of this value now. Sorry for the mistake. As you can see, this variable is holding a value which is of type string. So that is why this type of is returning a string. Okay. So if you have noticed, like I have used a variable and then I have assigned a value to it. But if I want to change the value of this variable, then how I can do that? Because in previous lecture we have seen, if I declare a variable twice, a variable twice with the same variable name, then it will throw an error. Okay. So if you want to change the value of an existing variable, all you need to do is you just need to declare it once, and to modify the value of this variable you just write that variable name again, and you can write whatever value you want to store into it. For example, this time I want to store 24, and let's see what happens now. Let's comment this code to see the code visibly. Okay, so here we have an example of dynamic typing. So in this variable we have stored a value which was of type string, as you can see in the line number 46. Okay, so we have not explicitly told first name variable to store this particular type of value. We directly stored the number type of value in it. Okay, so what JavaScript does, it automatically detected what is the type of the value is stored in the variable and it returned it. Okay, so here it got to know, like this variable have a value which is of type string, so it returned string. Okay, and again we have changed that value of that variable to number. So in line number 50 it have detected like this first name variable have the value of type number, so it is returning number. Okay, so this way we can manipulate the value of a variable. Okay, we just need to declare it once with this kind of variable declarations, and later we just need to write the variable name and we can assign whatever value we want to assign to it. Alright, so now let me show you an example of undefined and null, because we have covered boolean value, we have covered numbers, we have covered strings. So let's see an example of boolean value, undefined and null. So writing code in this fashion, is totally valid in JavaScript. Okay, so let's see what is the value of this variable, because we haven't stored anything in this variable. We just literally wrote this variable and we haven't stored any value. So let's see. What it will return. So as I told you earlier, like if you don't store any value in a variable, then it will store a fallback value which is undefined. Okay, that means that variable doesn't have any value at the moment, so it is stored undefined as a value. So this is also totally valid in JavaScript, and if you want to assign it some value, then what we need to do is we just need to write the variable name and we can assign it some value. let's see the logs, what it will return now. So now I have stored a boolean value in this variable, so this time it is returning true. Okay, and if we check the type of this variable, again it is returning undefined only. Okay, so let's comment this whole thing to make it more visible. So here we haven't stored anything in this variable, so JavaScript is stored undefined as a value for this variable. Okay, that is why this line gave you undefined. That type of variable, type of the value which is stored in this variable is undefined. So that means the value and variable both are of same type. Okay, let me show you that as well. Okay, so here you can see from line number 54 it is returning undefined, which is the value this last name is holding right now. And in line number 55 we have checked what is the type of the value which is stored in last name, so it returned undefined. Okay, so that means undefined is both value and type. All right, and the last I want to cover a small bug which is there in JavaScript, and I wanted to highlight it in front of you guys. So you just make sure when you are working with type of, you don't do such mistake. So what you think this value will return? What do you think the type of this value will be? It should be null, right? But let's see what it returns. Okay, so now it is returning object, which doesn't make any sense at all. It should return null, but this is a kind of bug in JavaScript which is still there for some legacy reasons. So just make sure whenever you are working with type of, all you need to remember is when you are checking type of null, it is returning object, so it is a bug. Okay, so this is all I wanted to cover in this lecture. Just to recap, this true and false are the boolean values. We can store these values in the variables as well, like this. Floating points and integers are all comes under number, which we have seen I think somewhere here. Yeah, here itself. Let's see again. Line number 41, 42, 41 and 42. Okay, so booleans, or sorry, floating points and integers both are of type number, and strings should be under either single quotes or double quotes. Line number 43 and 46. Okay, so it can't be like single quotes in the starting and double quotes at the end, or double quotes at the starting and single quotes at the end. It will return the error right away. Okay, so you make sure you don't do such kind of mistakes. And then we have seen how the dynamic typing works. Here we have stored a value of type string in a variable, then we have manipulated the value of that variable. We have stored a number in it. Since JavaScript reads the code from top to bottom, so it returned the value, the type of this variable string first, because it read this line first. let's comment it again. Line number 46. So it read this line first, that is why it returned the type of first name as string, and then again going down it found like first name is storing a value which is of type number, so it returned the type as number from the line 50, which is this line. So I hope it is clear. And if you don't store anything in a variable, then it takes a fallback value which is like this. Okay, so it automatically stores an undefined as a value. Okay, so it is similar to this. If you don't store anything in this variable, then the variable will return undefined as a value. Okay, which is coming from line 54. If we check, then it is line number 54 script.js, this. And if we check the type of the value which is stored in this variable, so it returned undefined. So from here we got a clear idea, like undefined is a value and data type both. Okay, and at the last we got to know about the bug which is existing in JavaScript, that is, if you check the type of null, instead of returning null it returns object. Okay, so this is all about this lecture. Let's see you in the next lecture.